This episode of Tensei was a bombshell. Eris Greyrat didn't just leave Rudy to train, she left because she realized she was a liability against the Dragon God. Her transformation into the Mad Dog really has changed everything for Season 3. So what I adored about these episodes in general, and don't worry, we will cover Episode 2 in tomorrow's video, was a bigger focus on Eris, who I thought was one of the stronger threads from Season 1. We do a flashback to when Eris left Rudy, and this moment felt like her realizing how weak she was. I think at first it could easily be interpreted that Eris feels weak because Rudy is so strong, but I think that more or less it's because of the trauma of Orsted. Because we see throughout episode 1 that when she is training, she is constantly thinking about that moment with Orsted. It's also her #1 goal and her reason for wanting Ghislaine to take her to her former master. But there is this other pull that is constantly giving her the strength to go through with this, which is where I think Rudy comes in. Orsted is the goal, and Rudy is more or less her fallback, her anchor. She uses Rudy as an example of how she should carry herself, because in her eyes, Rudy is this amazing person, and as she put it herself when she had sex with Rudy, they belong to one another now, and so she feels this overwhelming sense of purpose and drive to live up to the example that Rudy sets. I thought this was the best way to characterize Eris and her actions, like how it was revealed in Season 2 at the end. Eris doesn't hate Rudy, even though that is how Rudy took it. Eris actually hates herself and her own weaknesses for not being able to do anything against Orsted. And actually, it's an interesting way to frame their relationship and also reflect on Rudy's, who he himself went through absolute hell thinking he was the one that wasn't good enough. And to a degree, no, he was not. Eris's decision helped to make Rudy reflect and do the same thing that she was doing, which was learning, growing, and training, gaining experience, and trying to become more responsible. Though I will say, I think Eris's journey is slightly more compelling for me already, and I think that's just because I like Eris as a main character more than I like Rudy as a main character, generally speaking. I don't know, this is something about her character and her way of interacting with the world. It's fun, it has a lot of layers, like an Olga. Her insecurities, dating back to Season 1, are interesting from my own perception, and now in Season 3, I still feel the same way. So Ghislaine takes Eris on a bit of a journey to where she learned all of her skills as a kid, and I first have to say that it is so refreshing, so refreshing to see Ghislaine for the first time in so long. She is a cool character, and I like her for her character. Plus, I just think back to Season 1 where we would learn all of the crazy antics Ghislaine would get up to, especially in survival situations, shall we say. She feels like a feral animal, but clearly she is much more mindful than that. She's one smart fox, so to speak. So it's nice to see her again, though, which is funny because her old master, Gal Faria, thought she had died long ago, but actually just seems to be good shape and quite good looking too, which I imagine Ghislaine walking into the dojo with the sound effects and everyone being like, what the hell am I even looking at and hearing, for that matter? So let's talk about Gal Faria, who I thought was an interesting man. He seems like someone who is constantly measuring himself against everyone, but from a place of confidence. He also doesn't seem to have any respect for the rules or traditions beyond noticing that they're important to everyone but himself. We see that in action when he makes Eris fight a random who she nearly kills, then his daughter who she nearly kills. Like, goddamn, Eris, you didn't have to literally beat the she out of these kids, chill. But hey, that's how Eris rolls, and of course the reason is because she's angry at Orsted and doesn't know how to cope with that overwhelming rage, unless it's by unleashing a can of whoop-ass. Well, she is immediately awarded the title and role of Sword Saint, which has everyone in the dojo disagreeing with nobody really backing him up on this. But I actually like his reasoning here because it makes sense from his perspective. Eris had already took out 2 kids who mastered the Sword of Light, and to him, titles mean nothing when the person is special to begin with, like he is. And he is right. In life, when you notice someone who is special, you treat them as such. Now, as we will see, Gal didn't have the intention of making her live in the lap of luxury, far from it, but I can see why Gal would go through with this decision, and I think it makes sense. Eris is special. clearly. So Eris begins her training, and after being bullied by Gal's daughter that she destroyed and her boyfriend, she is being bothered and goes to a secluded cliff in the snow to train day in, day out. Now, the fact that Nita was still making fun of Eris after she was beaten to a bloody pulp, that's, as you can tell, kind of funny to me. It also shows that Nita takes advantage of her position as Gal's daughter, and Gal as well puts a lot of pressure on her too, seemingly. Now, here's some theory time, but my guess is that in time, we'll see that Gal probably loves Nina so much that he doesn't want her to be better than he is, but not out of some sense of fleeting insecurity, but because he probably feels that he doesn't want her to lead a life as she had, that she is destined for bigger things. I don't know. That's my theory for this video. Probably wrong. But this training montage of her going through years and years of practice swings was kind of kick-ass. While I don't like the overuse of montages to show the passage of time typically, I actually thought it worked fine here since she was only doing one thing every single day. I think it also shows that this isn't just a cheap power-up for Eris either. She literally grows into her body here and by the end sheds her childish look from season 1. But throughout this time, she was only thinking of Ghislaine, Rudy, and Orsted, and that acted as her motivation throughout it all, constantly reminding her what this was all for. This characterization of Eris during these moments in her life on the surface represent as a little boring, maybe? I think a lot of people would see this as her skipping power levels or a lazy way of having her get stronger. I actually don't agree with that, even though I think I typically would in most any other given situation. I think it works here because Eris is a character that needs to stew a bit, which is why we haven't seen her around for years. All she has been doing is training. Eris is a character that stands out so well because of her, well, hair-trigger personality. Going from the bratty child to the child who was out for blood and vengeance, but also to take what she wants in the process, I don't know, it allows for the viewer and herself to really gauge what she wants and keep true to those guiding lights. Ghislaine, Rudy, and Orsted. That's all you need to know. She wants to be as feral as Ghislaine, as strong as Rudy, and to be better than Orsted. And we see that these aspects in her personality are constantly throughout coming through in different ways, one of which we're about to see. One of the best moments of this episode is where Eris earns the name the Mad Dog, which is perfect for her at this moment in her life, and honestly kind of true when she was a kid. Well, after training for years, she is now a grown woman and is tired. I feel ya. She clearly wants to level up in her pursuit of Orsted and learn the Blade of Light, so when she runs into Auber the Peacock Blade, amazing name by the way, who is a practitioner in the sword god style, mind you, she immediately fights him, and while she loses, it is clear that Eris is now just on another level entirely. Even Auber realizes her growth. However, Ghislaine has an issue with all this. After she sees Eris retire to her room angry, she goes to Gal to demand Eris finally learn the Blade of Light. And I gotta say, once again, Gal here drops a big knowledge bomb that changed my entire perspective on Eris's training and what it means. That Eris being awarded the title of Sword Saint immediately was not only earned, but only meant that she would be put through hell. It was her ticket to despair, pretty much. Gal explains that Eris is being trained differently from how he trained Ghislaine because Eris's goal is Dragon God Orsted. That inherently means that he is not good enough on his own to get her there in time, which he plainly says to Ghislaine that eventually Ghislaine, will overcome him in time, but Eris wants something different from anyone he's ever trained. So because of that, Eris needs to train completely differently and in all of the sword god styles that are out there. The reason is because Orsted knows every style to the point that they've all become second nature to him. Anything Eris uses, he will simply use against her and kill her with. So now that Eris has went through years of practice swings, she now is leveling up and training with Auber Corbett, who is the North Emperor. And as it turns out, all of that training pays off, and she even oppresses Auber, and he agrees to train her more and more. Now, I think we have to talk about these sword styles a bit more, because there is some complexity to them that I don't think this episode really went into much detail on. This leans into Tensei's constant inspiration from shonen manga and its rock, paper, scissors style of fighting. So this is what Eris is going to learn, and I think a good overview of how strong Orsted actually is, and something I wish they would have went over in this episode a bit more. Sword God uses an overwhelming extreme speed with offense. The Water God has the ultimate defense and counters, so think like people who parry in Elden Ring, and North God, which is trickery and adaptability, which explains why Ghislaine didn't want Eris to learn from Auber initially. She felt that Auber will teach Eris something that doesn't live up to the Greyrat name, which is funny because the Greyrats are low-key kind of horny AF. So if Eris is able to learn all three of these styles, then she can hold her own with Orsted. It also puts better into context a lot of the complaints that I see from light novel readers about Tensei, basically since season 1. They do not care to leave details such as these out, which honestly, if there are any light novel readers in the chat, please do voice your opinion and let that be heard. I hear all sorts of varying opinions, so I'd love to see a discussion about that. But before we continue, I want to mention the Magda title again, because if we go back to season 2, which I covered in my recap, that Rudy's title of Quagmire was very symbolic. It had a lot of symbolic meaning, right? Eris being called Mad Dog is interesting because it highlights their divergent paths. Eris is becoming a weapon of pure rage, while Rudy is becoming, or has become in past, more utilitarian, a somewhat depressed mercenary during that time. Rudy had to find purpose again, while Eris is solidified the moment she cuts off her hair. It's just an interesting juxtaposition that further shows how important they are to each other as a couple. More so than I think Sylphie and Roxy. I think Eris and Rudy complete one another. They're the true couple. They have the most connection in my mind, which, once again, I just kind of wish Rudy didn't have two wives and instead just ended up being in failed relationships with the other two instead, not because of some traditionalist thing, just because I thought it would be more interesting. Because then I feel like the Eris payoff would kind of be gangbusters and just, for me, emotionally satisfying. That's more so how I would write the story. It's not really a critique of anything, mind you. It's just personal taste. This felt like the payoff after the long, arduous journey, though. I will admit that. I love how expressive she was when she channeled Rudy and how she sees him as this amazing person to strive after. The strength that her love for him provided her pushed her through into the next stage of her training. I think as well, Bind really loved animating and making this episode, specifically because of Eris and low-key Ghislaine. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but this episode felt a bit different from season 2. Season 2 to me felt kind of dour, safe in some of the episodes, because the setting didn't really change for a majority of it, but seeing the life they put into Eris, Ghislaine, Gal, and Auber, it just, I don't know, it felt like the team was excited to animate and draw something who wasn't Rudy for once, which is cool, and I think helped make the episode feel a bit more special. That being said, by the end of this episode, I was fully on board with Eris again, and I think for me, she is the most compelling main character. I would absolutely kill for a side Tensei series of Eris and Ghislaine adventuring. Think like Frieren, but with angry tsundere and a half-naked fox baddie. So I hope that season 3 is that journey. I hope she doesn't just show up one day and is like, "Hey Rudy, take off those pants, I'm back." Basically, just don't do what they did with Roxy, which I felt was a missed opportunity. Which is funny because I've heard from other light novel fans that they were not happy with the portrayal of Roxy in season 2. So my hope is that Eris, out of the 3, which yes, obviously Eris is going to get married to Rui. That is such a foregone conclusion. They're not even keeping it a secret. But that if they do, that at least for Eris, we get a majority of this season focusing around her and her exploits before just becoming Rudy's wife. But, understanding Eris's transformation from that lovable tsundere into Mad Dog, I think was the best part of this episode. While she was sharpening herself into a weapon specifically to protect Rudy, Rudy was back in Renoa changing into someone she might not even recognize anymore, which may become a big issue. So if you want to see exactly why their reunion is going to be the most complicated moment in the entire series, you need to see how Rudy's Quagmire was actually the perfect mirror to everything Eris just went through. Watch the full season 2 breakdown right here to see the other side of that coin. Make it a great day or not, the choice is yours.